Welcome to the Bibles.net podcast, where we have casual conversations with people whose ministries have changed our lives. Each episode, we introduce you to someone you'll want to meet, whose life and ministry can help you know and love Jesus better. We'll also answer a relevant question with a biblical answer and share with you some life-changing resources you'll want on your shelf. I'm your host, Eden, the editor of Bibles.net, who loves Jesus and believes he's the hope you need today. Well, thanks so much for being willing to talk today. I'm just so thrilled I get to spend a little time with you and learn about what the Lord is doing in your life. And yeah, I've been so encouraged by your husband's ministry, and I know that behind every pastor is a really strong woman. So excited to get to know you today too. So thanks for.
Well, thanks for inviting me. So fun to talk to you a little bit, and yeah.
Well, I'd love to hear what are a couple of things that just bring you joy.
Oh man, I am a pretty simple girl. I love the sun, literally, like that brings me joy. If there's like a patch of sun, I'm like a cat. I will go and find it, lay on the ground in the patch of sun. And it's, here we are in the middle of January, and every year, and I live in the Santa Barbara area, and so I'm such a wimp. I'm like, that's it, I'm moving, it's too cold. So I'm just like, I just want to be in the sunshine. My garden brings me joy. I'm not very good at it, but
what do you have in it?
What do I have in it? I have got some kale. I pulled some carrots yesterday, and I just felt like a superstar because I was pulling, and they were of different colors, carrots of many colors. So that was really fun. Let's see, kale. We have some herbs, some lemongrass, and currently not a ton though because it is the middle of winter, and I've been lagging on the garden. So there's
nice.
that. Yes.
So what does winter in California look like? Is it 50s? Is it 60s?
Like the colder days are in the 50s.
Okay.
At night, where I live about 3 miles back from the beach, and so it gets a little chillier at night, and so it could be in the 30s on the coldest night.
Wow.
Yeah. At my place it is at least. And but yeah, like yesterday I think was just solid in the 50s all day, and we're all kind of chilly, and I'm at work in the shop that we have, and we're all, ooh, it's so cold. On my way home, I was driving, and I was like, we're so ridiculous. My son lives in Boise, Idaho right now, and he's like, I looked on my weather app and it said 9 degrees. I'm like, oh, we're so cold here.
Yes, that's our life in Chicago here right now. It's been really, really cold recently, but you know what? Whatever you're used to, that changes how you view the weather. If you're used to sunny and 70, then 30 is terrible.
Yes, it's all relative, right? It's truly just all relative. And I think that you prepare for it more when you're in an actually cold place. You have actually warm clothes, and we don't have warm clothes. I could choose to have, it's that weird space where you could wear like a big puffy jacket, but you'd be sweating. So
yes.
What are you going to do?
Yes. Yes. Well, I'd love to hear what your day-to-day life looks like these days.
Yeah, I'm all over the place. So I've got one child left under my roof. She's 9, and I homeschooled my kids for, like 12 years, I think. And she actually goes to a little Christian school. So that's kind of a different pace for me, which is awesome. So she goes to school, and then I work. My husband currently is working the family business, which is Channel Island Surfboards. And so he kind of is like the head designer and shaper in the wholesale factory. And then I work in our shop that we have in Santa Barbara twice a week. And I do the women's buying, which is so fun. I just choose cute clothes and make it look good. And that's my job. And I'm generally like the mom about the shop, like just make sure that everyone's keeping it clean. And I get to love on those kids. I just love the 20-somethings age group. And that's who is working for and with us. So a couple of days a week I do that. And then the other days I'm all over the place. So some days I'm doing stuff like this, maybe an interview. I haven't been writing in a long time, but I have written 2 books, and I'm I'm kind of taking a break from that for now and doing a little bit of life, but we see some hiking, some surfing, some cleaning up. I love to cook, so I cook dinner for my family every night, which is
So
just my favorite thing. Yeah. So we
yeah,
really try and kind of have like a slow pace where, I tell all my friends I want to be home by 4 so I can like start chopping onions.
yes, yes. And so for many years, your husband served as a pastor of reality church, and now he's working at Channel Islands full time. So how has that kind of changed your scheduling? Because I imagine you were probably involved in a lot more church things before. Is it comparable to then, or has your lifestyle really changed since coming out of that and investing more in the surf industry?
Yeah, I would say that there's a lot of similarities. He still travels a lot. He always traveled a lot for work, so he was gone just about every week doing something somewhere else. And he's currently doing that again, which is what we've been used to our whole lives together. We've been married for 26 years. So it's just part of it. But now he's following the championship surf tour all over the world. And then he was, doing ministry all over the world. This is just a different kind of ministry. It's a little more covert, but so as far as like that flow of our lives, it's really, really close to the same. But I do get more of him now, which is awesome. He used to be gone and out of the house before. He was up at 4 every single morning, and weekends, I would say weekends are just a whole new world for us because Saturday was just pressure, sermon prep, spiritual warfare. Sunday, he, did Sunday at church and then would sleep all afternoon because he was just dead tired. And then Monday was a catch up day. So if anything, even if he's working the same amount of hours, I do get more of him, which is really nice. So, and I don't know if you were going to ask this, but I'll just offer it. We spent, let's see, he started doing his, our college ministry 2 months after we got married. I was barely 23 and he was 25. And we took over the college ministry at our church. I know. I'm like, I think I was still in college. I was still finishing college. And so he's been preaching for 20 something years, nonstop all these years. Um, and so that's kind of all we knew. And that's kind of all our whole lives revolved around. And so, having given that up, it's just it's such a different life, but I don't regret a day of it. And doing like pastoral ministry was really, we gave it everything we had. We gave all of those years from 25 to 45 for him, or to 47 for him, to the church. And it was a huge, I would say, sacrifice outpour. And we don't regret a day of it. And it was time to move on. It was time to pull out and say, okay, I could keep going, but I've given everything I can give,
Yes.
in this capacity. And now my walk with Jesus needs to look a little bit different in a different capacity. And I think a lot of people in ministry, in pastoral ministry or any other type of professional ministry, I think oftentimes people keep going and going and going and going until they crash and burn. Whether that's, moral failure, I think that's just a manifestation of like, man, you gave too much and you weren't receiving enough from the Lord. That was a lack of intimacy with the Lord. And that was saying yes when you shouldn't have said yes. And that was like giving when you should have passed the torch. And so it was a really big decision for him to say, okay, and it wasn't even about the family business, about Channel Islands, because that was a side thing that he was doing because he has always loved shaping boards and working with his hands. And it was something that really was life-giving for him. And he had been doing that just on the side. but that's not why he retired from ministry. It was like, hey, I've done it. I've given it all, and there's a lot of blessings like that. We feel like, oh my gosh, I get you more now. Like you're not tired. You're not sleeping on the couch in the afternoon, like all weekend because you're dead tired. And we get to do kind of amazing fun things together. And we think, wow, like we feel like two people who like climb through the desert and like, you get to the end and you're like, we're so thirsty. And we're like, and I don't know how people keep doing and going and going and going. But I mean, our story is a little different, having lost our daughter to cancer. But and also my husband's like, he is a next level man. The man does not just plant a church; he plants 9 churches. So like, you know what I mean? And he doesn't just, that's just the kind of man he is. He's just like next level, give, do the thing. And then, yeah, just so blessed though to say, I even said this morning to him, like, wow, it was so heavy. I can't believe we did all that. Wow, there was so much spiritual warfare and we just experienced so much, pain and growth and all these things, but I wouldn't change a day of it. And I'm also grateful that it's time to have a different season and to pass the torch, because there are so many coming up behind us. We were the young bucks for so long, and now other people are young and they've got the fire, and dude, it's like, ready, go, your turn. Go for it. So now I just feel like it's so sweet. Even our ministry now is with mostly non-believers, and I can remember a time in my life when I was only around Christian women at all times, like all my friends with babies, and then this Bible study and that thing, and I was a stay-home mom and I was young, and I remember thinking, I never even get a chance to talk to non-believers. What would I even say? I don't even, like, my life is so different, and from before I was saved. And now I'm like, I'm surrounded by non-believers and I love it. I love it so much. I get to just pour out and love these kids, and they don't know who or what, and they're not looking at us as, pastors or any of that. They're just like, oh, this is a person who loves me. And then I can, like, just give them some truth and pray for them, and just hopefully lead them to the Lord.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And I love how you're just in a season of refreshment, and how the Lord, I think it's so easy when we're going through the hard things to just think, will this ever end? We read that after you've suffered a little while, that the God of all grace will restore and confirm, establish you. And just think of that, like, what a gift from the Lord that He's brought you into a different season. And there are hard things, but has there been any way? So you talked about having more time together, and um, just getting to minister to non-believers. Is there any way that God has particularly comforted you in this time since serving in the church?
Yeah, I would say I love that question, because I guess I never really like looked at it like that, but the answer I'm about to tell you, and it's twofold. Number one, a lot of stuff happened with our church after my husband retired, and then it was COVID. So he retired right before COVID hit, and so and there was a lot of bummer stuff that happened, and there was basically a church split, and it was super painful. And even though he had retired from ministry, it was like, hey, well, we're not going anywhere. We love you guys. This is our church, just because we're not leading and teaching, we're still here to serve and be part of this community. And so it was a really rugged time for our church, a few years of just a lot of tumultuous stuff happening. I think it was for a lot of churches with COVID, but there just happened to be a church split and a disagreement of theology and doctrine with the person that was hoping to move into that position. And anyway, long story short, we're in a sweet place at our church right now. We're still at the church that we founded. My husband leads doesn't lead worship. He can't sing worth beans. He's the worst singer ever. Terrible. He has a beautiful sounding voice too, which is hilarious. Like, his speaking voice is just it's beautiful. I'm like, babe, you should take lessons. Anyway, But he plays a mean guitar. Like, so he plays lead guitar. And so every Sunday that he's not traveling, he is playing in the worship team, and I serve coffee, and we're just, we're there, we're loving on, just is happy to be included. We love our pastor. He actually got saved at our college ministry all the years ago. Yeah, and then he was on staff at our church in LA, Reality LA, and then he came up here with his family to take over the position. So it's super fun because after everything, after all the like pain and hurt feelings and COVID and tumultuous and disagreements and everything, we're like, dude, this is what the body of Christ is. We're together. Like, this is awesome. Like, we're limping along together, and we serve the Lord together. And so that's one of the ways I really feel like that was the Lord, and he allowed us to stay at that church that we founded. And then the other thing is our friends. I'm 49, he's 51, and we just have like the best group of friends. And it's funny because like some of our friends, we're 20 years older than them. I think we're the oldest in our friend group. But our friend group is just like, we're so tight. We're so in each other's business in the best way, and our kids are rad together, and it's just like, it's something really special that not everyone has. And so I think that's another major comfort, is that we can just be with all these sweet friends. And obviously God gave us another child, which is such a comfort, and she's 9. And so she hangs out with all their kids, and we're all doing barbecues, and it's just a really like sweet season of life. And it's like, well, we still have so much left to go, but I would just, to anyone listening who's like, oh man, when is this going to happen for me? When is that going to happen? Whatever this and that is, like the job or the, I don't know, ministry opportunity or whatever it is, like, hold tight. There is so much to come, and there's going to be hard times, and there's going to be sad times. And actually our pastor and friend said to me last Sunday, he said, because he was teaching on Abraham being willing to sacrifice Isaac, he said, I am so sorry that whenever I teach, scriptures like this or passages like this, I just always think of you guys and think of everything you've gone through with your daughter. And for the listener, our daughter died of cancer when she was 8. And so that was, 11 years ago. Yeah, coming up this next month is 11 years. And he said, you're such an inspiration to, the people who come to this church. And I said, oh man, I wish I knew which scripture it was off the top of my head, but where the disciples, Jesus is like, are you going to leave me too? And they're like, where would I go? Like, yes. I'm not going to leave Jesus over this. I'm not the only person this ever happened to. Like, my heart has been broken and smashed on the floor, but it's not Jesus' fault. He was there with me, holding my hand the whole way. And I said, Adam, where would I go? Not like, what other church would I go to? I'm just saying, Jesus is it. Jesus is home. And thank you for having us. Like, where would I go? I'm not going to leave the Lord because times are hard. And so if you're if you're in a hard time right now and you're like, oh man, and maybe it'd be easier if I do this or do that. Like, don't go anywhere. Stay in the hard, stay in the hard time, and Jesus will walk you through and walk you out of it. I promise you he will. Just give it time. Give it time and do your part. Like the hard part of friendships is like, you keep reaching out, you open your home, you're like, maybe you hate your house, doesn't matter, they don't care. Okay, maybe come outside, we'll hang out on the patio, come over. Like, you reach out, you open your heart, and you open your heart not only to the people that you do life with and community with, but mostly to the Lord. You have to keep opening your heart to the Lord, and not like, where would I go? He's the best thing I've got going. Like, Jesus is the actual best, only forever. And I've been a Christian for 30 years. And I can still tell you, like, he's the best. That's it. That's it. That's what you've got going for you.
Yes. Amen to that. And I think it's so powerful coming from someone that has walked through significant pain, because when you're in the pain and the questions start coming, that temptation is real. Especially for people that have not been through significant suffering yet. when that suffering first comes, it can be so difficult to cling to and run to Jesus. But it's so encouraging to hear a testimony of, yes, stick with him and he sticks with you and he's holding you all the way. Um, I would love to hear a little about the book that you wrote. Um, yeah, your book, And Still She Laughs, and just kind of what inspired you to write that. And for someone that's new and that maybe is going through something tough, like uh, what it's about and how that might encourage them in their suffering.
Sure. So, like I said, 11 years ago, my daughter passed away from cancer, and she had been diagnosed 3.5 years prior. So for 3.5 years, she was 5 years old. We
Mm.
were, all the things, cancer treatment, surgeries, untold surgeries and chemos and radiation and everything. And we even went to Israel for 3 months to seek alternative treatment at the end. Came back 3 months later, and she was in heaven within like 6 weeks. And so we were obviously super devastated. And, I just had to live in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And my faith never wavered. I never was like, where are you, God? You do feel like he doesn't hear you. I just want to say that if you feel like God doesn't hear you and there's only silence, like, yeah, that's real. That's a thing. And it feels really real, and it's really painful. But my faith didn't waver like, oh, well, God's not a thing because my child died, because logic says, well, people's kids die every single day. So I liked God before my kid died. It would be really illogical for me to not like God after my kid died. And I just say that in a very blunt way. I'm kind of a blunt person, very nice person. People are like, you're so sweet. I'm like, I know. And sometimes I'm so blunt. So I can be blunt. So anyway, forgive the bluntness, but I found myself like in an inwardly bitter kind of way. And so I just really stepped back from really anything. I wasn't doing any guest speaking. I wasn't I just was pulling back. There was a blog I used to write. It's still online. It's called prayfordaisy.com if you want to go back and look at that. But I used to write that blog. I quit. Just nope, not having any more words. I just was inside in my thoughts, and I just realized, like, I think after a while, I realized, like, hey, there's a bitterness in me. So it wasn't like a lack of faith. It wasn't like anything, but it was this sneaky bitterness inside me. And it took about 3 years after she went to heaven to like process these things with the Lord and have, go through all those stages of grief and fear and questioning, and get to a place where, where I felt like the Lord was leading me in the scriptures to just bring me to a place of, what's the opposite of bitterness? Joy, right? And so that book sprung from that. So it's kind of like, it's called And Still She Laughs. And ooh, I forgot my subtitle. Unearthing Peace and Presence? No, that's my other book. What's my subtitle?
Defiant Joy in the face
That's
of
right. Defiant Joy. Yes, in the depths of suffering. Oh my gosh, it's been a while. I think I wrote it in like 2016. And what are we? Yeah, 8 years ago. 6 years? Can I do math? Is that 8? That's 8. 6, whatever. 7? 7's a good number. Well, it was published almost. Anyway, moving on. So that's where that book. Okay. So that's where that book came from, and it's kind of a journey of like taking the reader with me. Not a whole lot of what happened. There's a couple chapters of what happened because I didn't want to camp out there. I didn't want to like I remember there were passages that I would write that I would have to like really check my heart about and say like, I could really make this passage more painful because it was.
Yeah.
But what's my motive? Is this because I want the reader to feel sorry for me? Like that was a real thing. I remember him being like, that's not the Lord. Like it just doesn't feel like God wants me to write just so the reader would feel sorry for me. So there's definitely some like enough pain in the passages that the reader understands like this is the terrible thing that happened, but I didn't want to camp out there. So I kind of like went into a place of like, okay, this is how the Lord brought me. This is how I kind of figured out, wow, your heart's pretty bitter. And this is how the Lord brought me to a place of joy in that depths of suffering and how I could move on. And it's pretty honest. I think a lot of people have reached out and said, dude, thank you so much for being honest and for not sugarcoating everything. And I think that one of the most painful things after losing her were Christians who would be really happy clappy. And some really painful things were said to me. And I actually write them in the book, not too many of them, because that's another thing. I'm like, no, I'm not going to camp out here because that's just going to feed my bitterness. But, you know, like I think Christian culture, at least, I think it's changing now, but Christian culture really over the last, I don't know, couple decades has been very, all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. And I'm like, okay, that's not what that verse means. Or, you know, like, oh no, it's better that she died. I actually had someone say, and he's just not a wise person, but he said, oh, that's actually good that she died before she could make any big mistakes in her life. Or like, you're lucky that, yeah. And I was like, so a lot of things like that were said, or just more, you should be, you know, don't grieve, don't. And I just think that's from the pit of hell, not to grieve. I mean, Jesus cried over Lazarus and he was about to resurrect him. I don't know if he knew he was going to resurrect him or not, but he wept over Lazarus. And Jesus, you know, experienced human feelings and created human feelings before I was even a human. And so I think that there's so much benefit and fruit when we dive into those feelings, but then when we don't let them sweep us away. And he says to weep with those who weep and to laugh with those who laugh, or rejoice with those who rejoice. And Proverbs 31:25 is like kind of the catalyst. So that's kind of the idea behind the title of the book, And Still She Laughs, because it says that she's clothed with strength and dignity and she laughs at the fear of the future. And I thought, gosh, I want to be like a woman who can laugh without fear of the future. I want to be like that. How do I get there? And I remember being like, wow, Lord, like, so we know that passage is describing the Proverbs 31 woman. We're not sure exactly who wrote the passage, but it's speculated by some Bible scholars that it was written by Bathsheba, wife of David. Yes, I know. To her son. And because anyway, and I thought, well, okay, well, if Bathsheba wrote this, that's a woman who has experienced pain. And if she, like, so much pain. I mean, you could say rape, you know, death of her child, family drama, murder of her husband, who was an awesome guy. It's not like he was some schmuck and like, you know, oh, well, that's good. I don't have to worry about that. Like, we know Uriah was a good guy.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, a lot of scholars think it could be her. If it was her and she's saying to her son, this is the kind of woman you want to look for. She's saying, this is what is good and right to be a woman. And I think I know for me, often I would cringe at Proverbs 31. Well, I'll never measure up to that, and I'll never measure up to that. But it's not meant to be like, the Proverbs 31 woman is just like, hey, this is a good rubric of like, of what being a woman can be. And she's telling her son, this is the kind of woman you want to go for. So I just kind of put two and two together, and I just thought, and it just led me down this like beautiful rabbit hole of all the people, not all, so many people, women especially in the Bible, who suffered and how they walked through that suffering and how they carried themselves afterward. And we're all given the choice, right? We all have free will, how we're going to deal with suffering. So in culture, Christian women culture, at least, we think this is the way, but like, no, 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 no. God created me to be me. He created you to be you. We're very different people. Every single person is so different from the other. We're not to be cookie cutters of each other. I'm not to be exactly like, Mary, mother of Jesus, and I'm not to be exactly like Deborah, judge of the Hebrews. Like, I'm supposed to be me, Kate, and what God's given me in the way that I can walk through these things in a way that is healthy and righteous as much as it depends on me.
Yes, amen to that. And you said that it took about 3 years for, you said, the scriptures to really be kind of speaking into that pain. Was it those specific passages and kind of seeing women in the Bible that the Lord used to comfort you, or would you say there were some other specific passages that God really used to kind of heal you of that bitterness?
Yeah, it started there, and then it went to Genesis 18 with Sarah and Abraham, and all Sarah's pain that she went through, not only with being barren and with what's her name? I can't, my mind's blanking. Her Hagar. Thank you. But ultimately, her laughter was bitter when the three strangers come, and then they say, basically, the Lord says, like, your wife is going to have a baby by next year, and she's eavesdropping, which I love. I think it's so classic that she's eavesdropping, like, just pretending. And then she's like, yeah, right.
Yes.
And then the scriptures tell us she laughed. And then the Lord said, why did you laugh? And right? And then he's like, oh no, you laughed. And I'm like, oh, like, that shows me God is seeing my bitter heart. God was seeing that every time that I was like, why would I ever, why would I ever have a blessing again? God ripped all this out from me, under me. Why would I ever? And I had that same bitter heart as Sarah, because there was so much pain and loss and waiting. And I felt like God was calling me out, like, no, you're bitter. You're laughing in a bitter way. And I want you laughing in a joyful way. And so it just took a long time, but ultimately it was Jesus on the cross. And not like, well, the atoning of my sins, like, that's all amazing. Like, but it was the night before when he's like, I don't want to do this. Yeah. I don't want to do this. And he asked his father if he could not. And the answer was no. No, you've got to do this. And I'm like, wow. Jesus' biggest answer to his biggest prayer was no. And if that's like, okay, it just like gave me like an attitude adjustment. Like, who do I think I am? Like, this is what the Lord had for us. I mean, we had the hundreds of thousands, even maybe up to 1 million people praying for my daughter's life to be saved, and it wasn't. And so I kept going, why? And ultimately what I landed on was like, well, whatever the answer is, 2 things. At number 1, I trust the Lord. That's just how it was going to be, because he's sovereign. But number 2, I don't think any answer that God could give me would be good enough. And I'm just being blatantly honest. Like, if he said, wow, there were 5 people who got saved from reading her story and praying for her, I don't care. Like, this is the real me. Like, I don't care. I'm not going to sacrifice my daughter. Sure, they can go get saved a different way. So if you told me, if God said, okay, I have all the reasons why, that I'm not going to understand them. My brain doesn't, like, I'm not even on the same plane, anything as the maker of the universe. And so I'm not going to understand it. And I think part of that is just like, I just have to honor God as God. It is what it is. And I've chosen to say that I am so blessed because God gave me 8 years with a beautiful young woman, and she was mine to call mine for 8 years, 8.5 years. And not everyone gets to have a baby. Not everyone can have a child live up to 8 years, and not everyone, not everyone gets that opportunity. And so I just had to make
Yeah.
several attitude adjustments, but kind of go in that way of like, nope, I'm going to stop looking at what I don't have and what I'm missing, and I'm going to look at what I do have. And that just like, oh man, it brought me so much joy. And I have to continue in that way even now. I can tend to, get bummed out about her sometimes still. And nope, I'm so blessed. I got to have her for 8 years, and I'm going to see her forever and ever. And almost every night when we pray, we always say, and say hi to Daisy for us. And, and I love it because she lives somewhere beyond the veil. She's not gone. She's gone from earth, but she's still alive. When strangers ask me, I don't tell every stranger, and I talk about that in the book. I don't tell every stranger what happened to us, because it's pretty sacred, and they're going to look at me like horrified and like it's contagious and or something like that. But I often say, well, I have 3 kids. One lives in heaven, one lives under my roof, and one lives in Idaho currently. And so, and they're like, but it's true. She lives in heaven.
Yes. Yeah. And the Lord says that whether we are at home in the body or away, that we are always with the Lord. And so, she is with him, and fun to meet her. Thank you so much for sharing. It's so wonderfully encouraging, one, to hear your attitude now and get to see how the Lord has answered all those prayers and brought you out of that bitterness, but also so wonderfully encouraging to, as I look ahead at fears in my life, or hopefully someone listening, fears in their life, like, well, the Lord can give us the confidence to face things with him without fear. And he can conquer that bitterness and that fear in our hearts. So, wow. Yeah. Everything you said was so encouraging to me personally, and hope will bless someone that's listening. I love to just end interviews hearing about some resources that have transformed your walk with Jesus. So trying to help people build their bookshelf. And so is there a book or a resource, maybe anything, that has really been instrumental in your walk with Christ?
Recently or over the years?
Either.
Okay. Wow. That's like saying pick a favorite child. Or a favorite food. I can't do that either. Oh, wow. I mean, I'm currently, okay, well, this might sound silly, but the Jesus Storybook Bible is amazing. It is so good. If you're listening and you're a young parent, or if you want to be, I don't care. I think every person should own the Jesus Storybook Bible and read it for fun to any child who walks through the door, or not, to yourself. I absolutely love the Jesus Storybook Bible. And there were so many years as a young mom that like I just didn't have time for anything else. And so I was so nourished by the Jesus Storybook Bible. I'm currently, well, I don't know if I can recommend it though. I was going to say I'm currently reading a Brennan Manning. Are you familiar with Brennan Manning?
That name sounds
The Ragamuffin Gospel. Do you know that one?
I've heard that title.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Oh, it's so beautiful. Girl, I wish I could say I have this one shining star of a book. I would just recommend, though, reading widely to the listener, and don't be afraid to add a book to your library. And if you read it and it's not a blessing and it's not serving you, then get rid of it. But don't be afraid to read, old dead guys, new guys, women, of course. Don't be afraid to read complementarian, egalitarian. Don't be afraid to read some Calvinist stuff. Don't be afraid to read Armenian stuff. Don't be afraid to read anything. I say read it. Ask the Lord, teach me what you have. Do you have anything for me in this book? And I know that he will 100% teach you. And I think that we need to learn as believers to eat the meat and spit out the bones. And so, right, there's not going to be, we're all human beings. So unless it's the actual inspired scriptures, word of God, Holy Bible, there's going to be stuff in there that's like, maybe don't Don't worry about that. I would
Yes.
also, okay, so here I am. I'm not giving you a specific title. I'm just giving book advice. This is what I'm doing. Book advice.
That's great. That's great. We'll take it.
Okay. So I would also, and this is funny coming from a woman with 2 published books, but I would just be wary of like whatever's hot and fresh and new. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So there's been a lot of times where something was like #1 bestseller in, Christian publishing, and it's trash. So don't read trash. I say read widely, eat the meat, spit out the bones, but don't read trash. Don't be a raccoon. That's just, it's going to be a waste of time. Um, I would say, so I also was talking to my husband about how our reading life, we have like an entire room full of books, not even kidding. Like every single wall is covered. And there's like commentaries, and there's, so many different kinds of books, just so many old books and new books. And also we even would read sometimes the controversial books. So when the whole emergent church movement came like 20 years ago or so, we got a Brian McLaren book and a Rob Bell book to be like, okay, well, what are people all in up on arms are? And we're like, yeah, this is garbage. Like there's no, I don't, not a whole lot of meat here. So it's mostly bones. So yeah, I did just throw a couple of, I would be careful of that. Be careful of authors. What author are you reading, and what credentials do they have? Not that they need to have a seminary degree. I don't, but like,
Yeah.
I mean more street cred even. So,
Yes.
does this woman who's giving parenting advice have a child older than 2? If she doesn't, I wouldn't read her book.
Yeah.
She doesn't know.
Yes.
And our publishing culture and system, which I love Christian publishing, but it's a business, and it has to be.
Mm-hmm.
Some people might say, oh, it's so slimy, it's just what sells. And I'm like, well, do you eat food? Because I do. And food costs money. So we have to make money to eat food. And so let's not throw the whole thing under the bus. Just be wise. And so they are going to publish things by, famous people who are going to write a very subpar book, because that book's going to sell a lot of money, or make a lot of money, sell a lot of copies. And you know what? Let's just think of those things as that keeps the industry going, so that deep, good, beautiful books that don't sell a ton of copies can get published. So that's why I'm not anti those.
Yes.
And I have so many friends in publishing. I have so many author friends. And one of my dear, dear friends is VP of HarperCollins Christian. And like, I admire him so much. And so I do love Christian publishing, but it is an industry like every other industry. You have to make money.
Yes.
But I would go back over and just like, if you find an author that's amazing, like dig through their backlist.
Yes.
I would say read some Brennan Manning, where your heart's going to rip wide open listening, to his words, and hearing his truthful journey from alcoholism and addiction, and
Yeah.
into like walking with the Lord, and yeah. And then there's just so many good books out there. I love books so much. And I would just say again, like, dig a little deeper than like what is being marketed toward you right now, or toward your age group right now, or your demographic. I would say no, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more. So happy reading, listeners.
Yes.
Go for it. Go to a used bookstore, Christian used bookstore. I would look up I would find book lists on platforms and ministries that you trust and love, or or at least know something good about, like Gospel Coalition, or
Yes.
and again, like, don't just read Reformed people. Don't just read this kind of, don't just read this certain denomination, and don't just read. Yeah, so read widely. That was such a long answer. I'm sorry, Eden.
That gives me food for thought and makes me want to go read a lot of different things. So
Yeah, good. I'm
yeah.
reading, okay, just specifically though, and if you do read it, email me. I'm about
Okay.
a third, halfway into The Relentless Tenderness of Jesus by Brennan Manning. It's so
Okay.
beautiful. Yeah, so beautiful.
Okay. I need to pick that up. The gentleness of Jesus.
The relentless tenderness of Jesus.
Okay. Wow. The tenderness of Jesus has been a big theme in my life over the past few years. That's something that I tend to struggle with believing, and he has been slowly, gently affirming to me, just in 1,000 different ways, like, Eden, I'm always tender towards you. Um, so that might be a really welcome book. Thank you for that.
Yay.
Yeah. Also recommendation, if you love the Jesus Storybook Bible, have you heard of Thoughts to Make Your Heart Sing?
Yes, we have that one. It's so sweet.
Okay.
It's so sweet. Yes.
Yes.
And it's so
It's the
beautiful.
devotional version of the Bible.
Yeah.
Yes, I love that one.
It's so cute.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was such a
Yeah.
joy to just talk to you and learn from you, get to know you. We're just so thankful for your faithfulness to Jesus and your continued love for him.
Thank you. That's so cool. That's so kind.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast today. If you enjoyed our conversation, I would encourage you to like or subscribe to our podcast so that you can hear the next conversation. And if something that you heard today spoke to your heart or got you thinking, I would encourage you to not let the day go by without talking to God about what's on your mind. We believe that he loves you and that he's pursuing you today out of that love.